kills my ears. So we're going to stick with what we have. Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible.
Hey, I don't need it twice. And then I thought we could do some God Bless the USA.
If tomorrow all the things were gone, I'd work for all my life, and I had to start again with just my children and my wife. I thank my lucky stars to be living here today, where the flag still stands for freedom, and they can't take that away. And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. God bless the USA. From the lakes of Minnesota to the hills of Tennessee, across the plains of Texas, oh, from sea to shining sea, from Detroit down to Houston, New York to LA, where there's pride in every American heart, and it's time we stand and say, oh, and I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free, and I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I'm gonna stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt about this land. God bless the USA. Bless this country. And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA.
Yay.
That was great.
John, would you mind leading us in an invocation?
Okay, let us pray. Gracious Father, we love our country, and we pray for our country in the future and in the present. We pray that our leaders will help to bring peace among our own nation, among all the peoples. We pray, Father, for the removal of all the hatred that is helping to destroy parts of America. We pray for unity. We need to be one. And we pray, Father, that all people will turn to God. For when people are all tuned in with God, who love Him and want to serve Him, then there can be peace. Bless, Father, now our meeting. Bless the speaker. We ask your blessing in the name of the Lord God. Amen.
And I want to welcome everybody today. I'm very excited that we have so many on. I show 30 people at this meeting. That's fantastic. We want to point out any guests we have. I see Alex Painter has joined us. He is a former speaker. I know Alex well because I work with his wife every day. So welcome, Alex. Are there any other guests on the call? If not, we'll get right to club announcements. Does anybody have any club announcements they want to share? We're going to move right along then. I have birthdays and anniversaries. Happy birthday to Kim Gardner, who is celebrating on February 20th. I don't believe she's on the call. And we don't have any other anniversaries for the rest of the month, but we do have some right at the beginning of March. So we'll have a whole lot of birthdays in March that we'll celebrate. Who is happy today? Let's do some happy bucks. Remember, all the happy bucks donated raise funds for our Kiwanis administrative budget. So who's happy today? Make sure you unmute yourself. We're all frozen. That's what it is.
I'm happy. I'm happy to have our honorable mayor speaking with us today and bringing out such a good crowd of Kiwanians to hear him speak.
I'm happy because this morning we met the New Day Kiwanis
Oh,
and we celebrated Orland Hatfield's 95th birthday. He had been in Hawaii with his son to celebrate that, but he's 95 and still going strong.
I'll give $1 for that wonderful, beautiful son.
other happy bucks. I'm gonna give $5 because I'm very happy that it's not snowing currently. I'm happy that Dave is able to join us this morning as our speaker. And I'm happy to see 30 people on this call. That makes me very, very happy. We are still meeting as a club. We're socializing as best we can, but I'm so excited that our club is still an active club in the state of Indiana and in our district. Any other happy bucks right now?
Hey, Jennifer, it's Stacia. I am going to also chip in a happy buck for Dave because he knows how to pull the crowds. I can see that for sure. But then also I want to give another happy buck to all of you who are supporting Girl Scouts right now. If you've seen my post, yeah, we had an unfortunate thing happen with my cookie mom's dad. He passed away, so be patient, but I'm very thankful that for all of you who support us.
I am so looking forward to the 3 cases of cookies that I purchased from Stacia and Priya that I can put in my freezer and eat on all year long. So thank
She's
you.
amazeballs. Yes.
Thank you for filling my freezer with Girl Scout cookies.
Thank you.
Other happy bucks.
This is Keith.
Go ahead, Keith.
I'll put in $2. One for having Dave here with us today, and the other one that I'm pretty well over my second vaccination shot 10 days ago. I'm still not clear back where I should be, I don't think, but.
We had a lot of people on the call last week that were very excited that they were either getting their first shot or their second shot. So I'm glad so many Kiwanians are getting vaccinated. The board is looking to see when we can meet again in person. If we keep getting vaccinations, then hopefully maybe in March sometime we'll be able to start meeting again in person out at the Elks. So we'll keep you all posted as to the schedule.
I'll put in $1 after getting my second shot a week ago. And I'm happy to say that the side effects were almost nothing. Just a tiny little bit of soreness around where they put the needle in. But other than that, no problem at all.
That's awesome. Well, thank you all for the happy bucks. I am now going to turn it over to Don Simpkin to introduce our speaker.
Thank you. As I said before, we're happy to have the mayor of our fine city with us today, Dave Snow. Dave was born and raised in Richmond. He spent 20 years in the broadcasting industry before becoming mayor, and in part, along with Gatch, that's probably how he got such a fine speaking voice. He is in his second term as mayor. He's a passionate promoter of community partnerships and community pride. He was elected in 2018 to become president of the Indiana Conference of Mayors to help him make connections around the state and bring positive attention and focus toward what we have to offer in Richmond. There have been many projects that we've observed between streets and festivals and parks and trails and so forth, and brick by brick and project by project and piece by piece, he's been making and continues to make Richmond a better place in which to live, in which to work and raise a family and enjoy. So it's my pleasure again to introduce our Honorable Mayor, Dave Snow.
Thank you, Don. I appreciate that very much. Thank you. And thanks to Jennifer and thank you to Bob for the invitation. I am truly thrilled to be here. This past year and just being pulled away from events and gatherings, you know, I ran for office to be mayor, to be more connected to the community and to be out and to be talking to everyone. And so as we've gone through COVID, man, it's been so hard to be locked down and isolated. So I truly mean it when I tell you that I am thrilled to be with you this day. I'm going to try and cover a lot of information quickly, and then my favorite part of this is always getting to your questions. And Don mentioned there in 18, that's my true claim to fame when I was elected president of the Indiana Conference of Mayors, because at that time, Pete Buttigieg was still mayor of South Bend. So I was president over Pete Buttigieg. And let's all just remember that so that I can continue that claim to fame in the future as the stock in Pete Buttigieg continues to rise. There was a moment there when I was the president and Pete Buttigieg was part of the group. So anyway, and a big kudos to you for continuing to gather through this. That is so important that you are making the effort and you are being here and still gathering. I appreciate that so much. You know, that has a ripple effect through this entire community. So just thank you for the effort you're putting into that. We're all digging out of this big snowstorm we just had, which is a once every 7 to 10 year event. This is not a common snow event for us around here. I have to give huge kudos to our street department. They worked so hard. I was so impressed. I was out first thing in the morning surveying the roads, and they were kind of so really early in the morning when we were looking at, you know, 6:45, 7 a.m. But our street commissioner, T.L. Bozell, assured me, he said, let the sun come up a little bit. It'll do wonders with the chemicals we put down. And by about 11:30, quarter till 12, I couldn't believe it, that I was just seeing pavement most everywhere. There were a few bad places that were still not great, but they were few and far between. So I just actually right before this dropped off donuts to our street department that I went and got them just as a thank you. They worked so hard. They worked a lot of long hours and they really put the effort in. So big thanks to the street department for all the work. that they put into that. When Bob reached out to me and asked if I would come and speak to Kiwanis today, the timing was perfect. And I got really excited about it because when he reached out, I was actively polishing up a State of the City address that is forthcoming. I typically give those maybe about the end of February, early March. I did not get an opportunity to do one last year. So when we sat and started talking about the normal schedule of the State of the City, if you recall, it was about this time last year that we were getting the very early word of COVID. It was starting to make headlines. It was starting to really dominate, and there were a lot more questions than there were answers. So, you know, I knew that COVID was going to dominate the narrative, and I certainly didn't have the answers, as you know, the CDC and others were trying to navigate through this. So we decided not to do a State of the City address because there was no way that I was going to be able to talk over the headlines of a global pandemic. So it's given me a whole lot to add to this year because there's still been a lot of progress. And so before I start working through some of this, and I'm gonna go through it quick because I want to get to your questions. But the thing that I want to say right out of the gate, though, is all the credit that is not my credit. I don't want to take the credit. It's to this team that we have. We have seen over the past year a massive global disruption due to COVID. We've all seen the pictures of empty sports arenas and empty events, and there's been no concerts, no music festivals, and just this huge disruption to our economy globally. But here locally in Richmond, there's been almost no disruption to our bus service, to our trash pickup. We haven't had boil advisories because we're not able to treat the sewer water. It's just been phenomenal, and that is a credit to this entire city team that just comes to work every day and does their job. And I just can't thank them enough for doing that. So I've been thinking about how, once we turn a bit of a corner here, how we have sort of a city employee appreciation day. And that same goes for the county employees as well. You know, this team has just worked so hard. So I just appreciate what they've done and all the hard work they've put in. And I thank them for that. So in talking about COVID, one important thing I do want to mention, I've heard some talk about their vaccines and their second shot. Richmond is fortunate to have 2 vaccination sites, one in the former Elder Bremen building downtown and one at the Wayne County Fairgrounds through Reed Health. We were seeing in the past couple of weeks a discrepancy in scheduling. The Elder Bremen building was getting overwhelmed and getting backed up, and the fairground site was being slightly underutilized. As our health department director, Christine Stinson, would ask some people coming in why they wouldn't just shift out to the fairgrounds where they could get in faster, a lot of the responses were that they were relying on the transportation system to get them downtown, and the bus system does not run to the fairgrounds. So we took that as a cue to reach out to the Federal Transit Authority and ask if we could designate a bus route to go to the fairgrounds, which would be a special route since it's technically outside the incorporated limits. We were able to get that done through some COVID relief avenues. And so now we're offering a bus route to the vaccination site at the fairgrounds at no charge to the riders. And we're able to offset some of that vaccination burden because we want to see everybody have an opportunity to get the vaccine. The website, if you don't already know, is OurShot, OURSHOT.in.gov. And there you can find out everything about the vaccine. And you can find out which age group is being permitted in and when you can go and when you can register to get your vaccine. And if you have any questions, just reach out to the health department. Thank you. I see that that's being posted in the chat. That's great. We had some dollars that were allocated to us for marketing, so we spread those out over radio stations, PAL Item, Hometown Media, with the Western Way News Gazette, radio, and all these different avenues, Great Deals Magazine, to just get the word about the vaccine out there. So you should be seeing that out so that everybody has access to that information. So as we talk about COVID-19, and I talked about that global impact, Richmond, of course, not immune to the financial impact of COVID-19. We had to, in our 2021 budget process, cut dollars out of our general fund, which is our main fund that funds a lot of our offices within city government, and we had to cut a significant amount out of our motor vehicle highway fund. That was due directly to the lack of collection and gas tax. And there's a lot of conversation around that because as people have been dispersed there's a lot of people that may just continue working from home. We may see less commuters in the years to come. So there will be a lot of discussions about how that ends up being offset. So although we had to reduce those dollars in our fundings, we're a financially healthy city. We can weather that storm. The only negative outcome will likely be that we'll be a little less agile in 21 and maybe into 22. And when I talk about being less agile, I don't want that to be a nebulous term. I want to give a very specific example of what I'm talking about. Over the summer, I was at Kroger, and as I'm scanning my stuff and putting it in my bag, one of the guys that worked there came up to me and he said, in my neighborhood, right in front of my house, and this is very typical in my life, I go places and people just come up and say, here's my issue. Can you deal with it while you're buying peanut butter? And that's fine. That's okay. But he came up to me and he said, right in front of my house, we are missing 2 panels of sidewalk. There was some utility work done there years ago, and they never came back and put the sidewalk panels back. So I reached out to our street commissioner and we drove out there and took a look at it. And it was some utility work from 4 or 5 years back, and the panels hadn't been replaced. So we were able to get that done. And within 2 weeks or so, they had their sidewalk repaired, and he just couldn't believe it. He said, man, I've watched all these kids have to ride down the sidewalk on their bikes and then go into the grass or right out into the street, and our sidewalk's fixed. I'm so glad I asked. And that's what I mean in that agility. You know, I really believe that the taxpayers deserve that kind of service. But when our hands get tied by COVID-19 and we don't have the flowing finances that we're accustomed to, then it kind of locks down a little bit of that agility. We'll still be able to go fix those sidewalks and curbs, but it might not be that you tell me a Kroger and then within 2 weeks it's all repaired and back to normal. So I'm a little concerned about that, but we're going to try and navigate that as we get into the spring and summer months. So how did we cut those dollars? We mostly went through our travel and training budgets all throughout the city, since we have to assume that travel and training will be limited for a while in person. So we cut a lot of that. We cut a lot of contractual services. We started within, so that way we could still provide the same services going out to the citizens. And then here in the offices, we just have to trim up in here and make do. I want to talk a little bit about what each department has done this year through this pandemic to show some of that progress, starting with our Parks Department. What a spotlight we've seen on our Parks Department through COVID. It really pushed everybody out to the parks because that was a place where you could socially distance and recreate. So the importance of having clean, safe, welcoming parks, it's always a top priority, but during COVID, it really became a hot topic. And just a big thanks to our Parks Department. They've done that. We were even able to install a new playground in the historic Star neighborhood. That was through a vigorous fundraising campaign that the Parks Department went through. If you have not seen that new playground in the Star neighborhood, drive by and take a look at it. It's pretty amazing. And then a big kudos to our team keeping our farmers market going. That was a pretty large undertaking. Our farmers market is an essential service in that people rely on it. We have a really strong partnership with Reed Health with our SNAP program, so that people can come out and buy tomato plants and fresh produce and things like that, and fresh meats and eggs. And Reed Health helps to double those dollars. So people really rely on that as a food service. And we really had to do some serious brainstorming to figure out how to continue to provide that service through the restrictions of COVID. And a big, big thanks to Caleb Smith and our Parks Department, the director of our farmers market. He did that and then found a way to, through partnerships, winterize the Star Jeanette building so we could have a permanent home for our indoor winter market. And if you've not visited that yet, oh, what a phenomenal job they did. And a huge thanks to Primex Plastics for their partnership in that project. So that's gone really well. Our street department, I was talking about with the snow removal they did, but I do want to talk about a statistic that I pulled up in doing some research, and I thought this was pretty profound. We went through some of our record keeping to look at the number of streets we have repaved or repaired since January of 2016, just in-house meaning that our street department did it. Then we coupled that with the work that's been done through our community crossings applications in our partnership with the state. I'm still waiting for the third number in that aggregate, and that is the amount of road work that the state did on their own behalf, just coming in. You know, they did that work on 27. I don't have that number yet, but so far my two numbers totaled are in-house paving and repair just on roads and community crossings brought us to over 70 miles of streets in Richmond, which is phenomenal. That is about 40% of our total length of road in the city of Richmond. So that's a pretty fantastic number that we have nearly touched half of the roads in Richmond since 2016. So that's just the great work of our street department, on top of picking up the leaves and plowing the snow and repairing the sidewalks and the curbs. So they've been working hard, and I appreciate that. I want to jump into our first responders really quick. Our fire and EMS is building their new 10,500 square foot training facility, which will be the Izzy Edelman Training Center for police and fire, which will not only be for our first responders, but it'll be a hub all around the state for training. And they've done some fantastic work. They've purchased some new vehicles and shifted their footprint around and where they place their vehicles. And today, their response time around anywhere in Richmond is under 3 minutes, and that's pretty phenomenal for a first response team. So I want to give kudos to them as well. Looking at the police department, I've made a lot of investments in our police department since becoming mayor, and some of the numbers in our police department are pretty remarkable. We have done quite a bit of hiring in the department. So going back and looking at that, since 2016, we have hired 33 new officers, which is a really huge number. And we have purchased several new vehicles. So we have 33 new officers. We have 9 more vehicles on the way. We've purchased 25 vehicles since I came in as mayor. That was a big hot topic when I ran for mayor, by the way. I don't know if you guys remember the 2015 campaign, but a big topic was police cars falling apart and what we were going to do about it. We had a couple of police cars with holes in the floorboards and things like that. And there were a lot of questions about how that would be rectified. Well, today we have 25 new cars and 9 more on the way. And that's also brought other investments with making sure they have all the right tools, vests and other things so they can get their job done. When I do the State of the City address, I'll dive way deeper into those numbers, but that's just a good overview. And diving into the stats, every year the police department takes an annual report. And so looking at that, the overall data, and I'm going to do a deeper dive into this when I give the big speech, but I'm trying to work through this quickly so we can get to questions. Jim Brandon, when I appointed Jim chief, did a great job of implementing what is called intelligence-led policing in our police department, and it really required us to make those investments and grow our numbers. We were able to resurrect the juvenile division. We were able to do so much more than what had been done in 10 previous years. So if you go back to 2015, we had just over 2,000 total reported crimes. If you go back to 2020, that number dropped to 894. And that's just an overall crime. And we've seen drops in almost every single category. So in 2015, Richmond had 61 robbery cases. In 2020, that was 17. And those are the kind of drops we've seen across the board with intelligence-led policing. It's really been a phenomenal effort. And of course, you know, sadly, we lost Jim. Mike Britt is our police chief today. He's doing a wonderful job. He served as deputy chief under Jim, and they worked together for a very long time. And Mike has done a great job of picking up that mantle and carrying it forward. We're also working through, I think somebody put in the chat, arrest data, how have arrests and conviction stats changed? So that, I'm glad you asked that. It's perfect timing. Now, when you get into conviction and you get into the penal system, that's all going to go to the county side because we do not have a judicial branch in city government. The police will make arrests and they'll turn their investigation over, and then the rest of that system happens on the county side. So getting into some of those numbers really quick, in 2020, our police department took in 41,000 calls for service in total, which is a staggering number for a police department our size. Of that, 329 resulted in arrest. That is less than 1% that resulted in arrest. If you dive down into that data, 221 of those arrests were identified as white or Caucasian, and 35 or 39, I'm sorry, were identified as Black or African American. Then we had 41 instances of use of force total documented, and we also see the same percentage in use of force data. We purchased a brand new software for our police department. And so one of the reasons that I'm still digging through these numbers is the reporting system changed about mid-year, mid to late year in 2020. So it's making it a little difficult to gather that data in the same way that I did in the past. But if we look at those 41 uses of force, 31 involved were identified as Caucasian and 10 were identified as African American. So we collect and analyze this data every year. And it's very important in how we inform our police department and how we inform all of our policies. Chief Britt is looking at some of our policies now and looking at how we can change some of those to better serve the community. But for us, one of the biggest hurdles that we face as a department is recruiting. We want to see a more diverse department so that it really represents a cross-section of the community as a whole. But we have trouble with recruiting. And that's where we always want help from the community, is encouraging young women and men to want to step up and serve their neighborhoods and serve their communities. So just a quick snapshot into our police department. Taking a quick look at the economic landscape. So thanks to 7 tax abatements that were passed through Common Council, we saw the creation of 11 new jobs just through those tax abatements. I'm going to add some more data to this from the EDC once I get their full report. We saw just a total of over $4 million in payroll added, the retention of 400 jobs, real estate investment of over $15 million. We also saw growth in our infrastructure and development department with a total of 1,900 new permits applied for, and total of $44 million, which is about a 30% increase over 2019, which is pretty impressive. And then I want to talk about one more thing really quick, and then I'm going to throw it to you. There's a whole bunch more stuff I can talk about, but this is all the stuff I get excited about. Of all this growth, one of the things I want to see us growing on as well is our projects outside of City Hall. It's great that our departments are all doing well, but what are we doing to really build a better community? I spend a lot of time driving around downtown in the Depot District trying to wrap my head around what we can do to make a really positive impact in that area, because it really is the heart of our city. And I came up with an idea early last year. COVID put some brakes on some of it, but we were able to kind of push it 1 yard at a time towards the goalpost, trying to make some progress. And we are just about to take a big leap here. We're finally at that point. So we have a program here at the city called the Revolving Loan Fund that some of you may already be aware exists. The Revolving Loan Fund allows for entrepreneurs, small business owners in the city to come and apply for gap funding if they don't quite have the equity or the means to fulfill their capital needs in a traditional bank loan. And they can come and get that gap funding from the Revolving Loan Fund. As I would go through downtown and I would look at these beautiful old buildings and I see them falling into such disrepair, I would constantly ask myself, where is the leverage in this? You know, because the reality is there's a lot of wishful thinking. I, along with everyone else, I've lived here my entire life, keep hoping that someone's going to come along and buy up this beautiful old building and start fixing it up. But maybe the reality is, until we start taking some of that risk, that's not going to happen, or it's going to happen so infrequently that we can't make a real positive impact to the buildings that we are losing. And so I got this pretty crazy idea, and I called up to our infrastructure and development director, Beth Fields, because she is often here the person that's good at putting some wheels under my big idea engines so that they actually get traction on the road. And I said, so we have the Revolving Loan Fund and we're able to provide gap funding. Can we not do gap funding? Can we write a program into the Revolving Loan Fund where we provide a building instead? Is that even possible? And so Beth started talking to our federal office to see if that's even a feasible idea. They allowed that. And so we wrote what's called the PLACE program. And we've spent quite a bit of time putting this together. So what would happen in the PLACE program is the city would reach out, the city would acquire a building, the city would spend the money to white box the building, meaning we eat that initial risk. And I want to talk about that because that's an important component. If we look at the model as it sits now, and we look at the condition of some of the buildings, my fun little example that I would use around here over and over again is, let's say Joe is making hats in his garage or in his basement. And Joe's hats, he puts it on Facebook and people love Joe's hats and everybody's buying one of Joe's hats. Ideally, what we want, our aspiration is that Joe is successful at selling hats. And so we get him downtown and we put Joe in a storefront, and our downtown starts to grow like that. We have people back there shopping for Joe's hats, and he's got the nice window in the front. The problem is, because of the condition of some of these buildings, it's an upside down venture for Joe. His ability to buy that building and then fix all those windows and fix the floor and update the sprinkler system and the electrical, and then to try to sell hats to make that back, you know, that's not going to work. So what if the city can eat that front end risk for Joe, put the building into the revolving loan fund program called the PLACE program, and Joe can then take his idea, go to Center City Development Corporation, go through the ISBDC, the Indiana Small Business Development, and they can work as a vetting source to bring Joe here to apply to the RLF and the PLACE program to get the building. If successful, Joe goes in the building on a 5-year program, and it's like a balloon payment. Each year, Joe's paying a little more to be there, and all of his payments are going toward the ultimate purchase of the building. If he's not successful selling his hats, the building just returns into the program. We re-white box it, and it gets ready for the next person that comes through the pipeline. If Joe is successful in his 5th year in the PLACE program, he's spent 5 years buying down the principal cost of the building. It's actually cheaper for him at that point to just go get the loan to pay off the rest of the building, and then his monthly payments go down. And then there's incentives in there if Joe will live above the shop, and so that we're also incentivizing livability downtown at the same time. I've had the opportunity to pitch this idea to 2 investors that have come to Richmond recently in the last week and a half to tour downtown and to mainly look at the Elder Bierman building for a potential living space. And they really lit up at this idea because they said, as we go to other cities, we're not seeing that momentum in place, and you guys are doing something. You're taking a step, you're taking a risk, you're jumping out there to manifest what it is you're looking for. So, you know, they both, independent of each other, said, you know, it's much more appealing to jump onto a moving train than to be the one trying to get it moving. So that was really reassuring to hear that. So somebody put in the chat box, what about the little depot? We have made investments in that. We just fixed the roof. So we're taking baby steps as we can. If COVID hadn't hit, I think we could have made progress faster, but there's a lot of potential for that building and a lot of potential for that area. And I am thrilled that we finally got the money to put a new roof on that building to close up that hole so that we at least, mitigate the damage that was being done by the hole in the roof. And now we can turn towards salvaging some of the inside of the building. I've been in that building and there's a lot there still salvageable. So that's pretty exciting. So I have talked a ton. I'm going to stop there. I want to open this up to your questions. I want to hear from you and hear what kind of things you want to talk about.
Dave, I think there's one more question in the
okay.
chat box about fiber. Since we could really promote our community as a perfect place to work remotely, do we have any hopes of getting fiber?
So I was contacted by a group that's working on a fiber program. They had reached out to me to discuss that. I expressed my interest in having a discussion with them. They have not reached back. And I reached out to Commissioner Plaster on that because I know that the Eastern Indiana Regional Planning Commission has done a lot of work on that front as well. So I don't have much more to share on that other than I've at least scheduled an appointment with some individuals, and EIRPC is doing a lot of that work as well. So that seems to be a continued goal that we continue to work toward. There's another question here. How are the population numbers trending? You know, that is a great question. I just received, I want to show you guys this. I didn't even know these existed, but just today, the Census Bureau sent me a certificate for our help with the census. We really dove in with the Census Bureau when they came to us and said, would the city be willing to be a partner, provide us some space? We said, the answer is yes across the board, because I really feel like we're in a position where we may see our population numbers either begin to stall, or maybe we have that big celebration one day when they have a slight tick up. I have not seen the final count numbers yet myself. If anybody else has, please share that. But I am anxious to see that once that's delivered, where we ended up. We really did a lot of work in trying to have a full count on the census. At that time, we had our community development coordinator here in the city working with the Census Bureau, using billboards and radio ads and all kinds of things to really encourage a full count. So I'm really anxious to see that once that's delivered back to us. Has the city acquired any properties yet in the new place program? The answer to that is no. So I'm glad you asked that. When I said that we've made a lot of progress, I feel like our airplane is cruising down the runway and it's just about to take off. We had to really take some time to identify what's our first bite out of that elephant. And I learned that lesson through when we went through the old hospital site. You know, we were faced with this giant sort of unsolvable riddle, but we ended up accomplishing that goal because we took little bites out of that elephant, you know. So when we looked at the place program and thought, okay, we've got a lot of work to do here, and it almost feels like too much work. Where's our first little bite? So we chose one specific building that is of the size and scope that can be our pilot program. And I fully know that once we jump into the place program in our first building, we're going to hit pressure points, pinch points. We're going to hit hurdles. You know, we're going to learn from our mistakes, and that's the plan, right? So we've made an offer on that first building, but we have not heard back yet. Once I hear back on that, fingers crossed, our offer on that first building is accepted, and then the plane leaves the runway. Have I caught some flack for the place program? The answer is absolutely, I have. People have said, I don't know that I like the idea of the city jumping into this and taking the lead. And, you know, here's my blunt response, and I don't mean this to be glib. I drive down there every day, and I'm seeing buildings that are literally falling to pieces. And every day that we wait, we are losing those buildings. And there are a couple of them that are already too far gone. I'll just be honest with you. We're going to get to some buildings that there's not going to be enough money. And every day that we wait, another building joins that list. So my take on it is that we can do nothing and then nothing comes of it, or we can do something and learn along the way. So I'd rather fail along the way and learn as we go than just watch these beautiful buildings crumble. Because once we lose them, they're gone. You know, we can't replace that history and that beautiful architecture. So our offer is out there on our first building. I hope that that offer is accepted, and then we will officially write that recipe as we go for how that success works. And then I want to share that with other cities and other communities. I'm hoping that it's something that is turnkey, that we can just share out to other mayors and other cities and say, this is what we did and it worked, and this is what you can do. So that's my hope. I saw another question come in. How can the city improve partnerships with our various educational institutions? I feel like the partnership there is doing well. If you see holes in that, please tell me. We worked with Center City and with Purdue Polytechnic to help them transition into downtown. We're very excited to have them right there. I have a great, healthy working relationship with IU East, Earlham, Richmond Community Schools, Ivy Tech. So if you see gaps in that from the outside, please tell me. But I effort to keep those relationships healthy. Pre-COVID, one of my favorite things to do was to speak to students when given the opportunity at all of our higher learning institutions. For the Earlham students, I actually took them on a bus tour. We would hop on a big bus and I would host the tour and just show them Richmond through the eyes of a local, so they would feel more comfortable getting around the city, because I really wanted them to get off campus and get around Richmond. But I've gone around and spoken to students of all ages, and I miss that very much. I miss getting to talk to the students. We were putting together the framework of a very beautiful Mayor's Youth Advisory Council. And I had a group of students I was working with at the high school that really inspired me. And then COVID kind of put the brakes on all of that. So hopefully once some of this dies down, I'll be able to get back in front of more young eyes, because they give me a lot of energy and they challenge me. They are not, they don't make it easy. I'll tell you that. Jennifer knows that. She works with a lot of kids. They challenge you. I love it. What do you think of when do I think some of the COVID restrictions will ease up? There's a lot of conversation about that. Some states we've been staying in lockstep with state government once we progressed to a certain point in this. We started with some local restrictions that varied a bit from the state. The governor, I think, as he progressed through, found more comfort in just laying out a set of restrictions that we could all abide by. And now we have federal restrictions, which we did not have previously. So we're adding that to the mix as well. The CDC has warned, you've probably seen it in the news, has warned states not to ease up too quickly because there's a fear of a surge on the heels of that. So we will take our direction from the health professionals. That's what I have tried to do this entire time, is to really listen to our health professionals. I'm hoping that we will see in maybe spring and summer some of these ease up, but there is absolutely no way that I can say for certain. I feel like the entire year of COVID has been like rowing a boat in the dark. And it's been this constant searching of the crystal ball. So I don't want to stand here and make any promises about when some of that will ease up, but my hope, along with all of you, is that it's not too far in the future. We have another question down here.
Make sure you unmute yourself if you have questions. I don't see any more in the chat box, so feel free to unmute yourself and ask away.
I'll just add something until somebody comes up with a question. I'm going to embarrass and shine a little light on your guest today, Alex Painter, who has pursued a wonderful project. And I know there's a lot of historians in this room that love the history of Richmond. Alex can talk about it a lot better than I can, but you may not know that Richmond was home to a very prominent Negro League baseball stadium, quite historic. And Alex wants to shed some light on that. And so he got with me and we pulled in our park superintendent, and we have now erected a marker to that, which is by the Charles House by the Rose Garden. We had a ribbon cutting plan for yesterday, but clearly that was not going to happen. So we moved it into March, but I hope you will keep your eyes out for that. And if you can be a part of that, whether in person or in a digital format, help us celebrate the history of that really remarkable stadium. You know, Richmond was such a progressive city. We have such progressive roots. You know, you look at the Madonna of the Trail statue out there by the park, and you think about, we were home to this very large. How many seats was that, Alex? It was a large stadium.
Not for nothing, 2,500 seats in that stadium.
2,500 seats. If you think about that, that is large. And so it had a lot of national attention. It was a big deal. And Alex has a book about it that you can also go find. So that's one of the other exciting things we've been working on, and I hope you'll keep your eyes out for. I'm thrilled that we are getting ready to really shine a light on that history, that part of our history.
We were very, very lucky. As soon as Alex's book was released, he was one of our speakers, and we had him come in and talk about the book as well. So.
Oh, good. So you all know that.
We love following it. Yeah, very happy to see that upright. Other questions?
Dave, could you talk a little bit about the major park and road projects coming up and in the next few years? I was particularly interested in I don't know how you would describe it. I think maybe some additional land was purchased between 3rd Street and maybe going toward the river. And there was talk of a walking bridge over the Veterans Park, and that project, there was a nice article about it. Could you talk a little bit about that one, and then as far as a timetable and then whatever else is coming up?
Absolutely. I think that is referring to the connector path that will connect the Cardinal Greenway trailhead down into Veterans Park. Right. So when you are back by Family Fitness Works and the bicycle shop, and you look to the west, there's the old brick utility building that's back there. And then there's a very steep hill that goes down in Veterans Park. And in the next couple of years, you'll be seeing a connector path come in that will guide people down into Veterans Park and then connect that to the Whitewater Gorge Trail from Veterans Park. So that's a really exciting project. Thank you, Don, for bringing that up. We are excited about that and how that in the future is going to connect to the little depot building, which is why we were trying to get the roof on there and get that secured. Richmond has a lot of opportunities with that water. You know, we really kind of lost touch with our water. Trees and everything grew around it. And, you know, we have water here downtown and we don't really touch it as a community. So we bought some equipment in our parks department to start working on some of that and start getting people more in touch with the water and making it a little more inviting. So that is a big, exciting project that you'll see in the next couple of years. Talking about the road projects, probably the most impactful project is going to come from NDOT. It is not an in-house project, it's a state project, but they'll be replacing the 27 bridge. And you may have already heard about that. Right now, the prediction is that will be a 2 construction season project. There was originally, in the very early onset of planning, there was a plan to close one half of the bridge, leave the other side of it open, take down that side, re-erect it, open that side up, then drop the other side and do the same thing. They ultimately decided that that was just not feasible logistically or financially, and it wasn't safe. And so they've decided to close the entire bridge, bring the whole thing down and rebuild it. There is a small section, what is that street, just on the north side under the bridge? Is that F Street right there? I think that's F Street. That little street, that little connector street will go away. That will not be there anymore. There will be far fewer pylons under the bridge when it's completed. I have made some requests to NDOT in that bridge project as they've started putting all their pieces together and getting all their engineering. I would like to see historic lighting on that bridge to keep it very attractive. The lights that you see now, NDOT likes to call those cobra lights because they kind of look like the head of a cobra, the way they go up and then they just kind of scoop over and have the light shield at the bottom. With that bridge being over the Depot District, I think it would just look so much nicer with historic lighting. And so typically NDOT's rule is if you request something outside of the normal scope, then you have to pay for it. So I've asked them to get me a cost on that historic lighting. Bridges are now commonly erected with fences. You see that on the 20th Street bridge that went up. I've also asked for a decorative barrier there and not just a black chain link fence. I've been to a lot of communities that have metal barriers that say the name of the city. And I think that would be great if it said Richmond. So something decorative, something really attractive. And I've also requested lighting on the bridge if possible, and particularly lighting under the bridge on the side over there by the Cordial Cork. Because when we have a lot of festivals and events in the Depot District, it gets really dark under that portion of the bridge and it's not inviting to people. So I've asked NDOT if they could put lighting under there to make it more inviting. And they were eager to say, absolutely, we'll get some costs together and we'll see how we can make that work. So that will be a very large project. It will disrupt traffic for quite a while. But if you drive over the bridge and take a look at it, it's very much in need of replacement. So I'm thrilled that the state's making that investment in the city, and I'm happy that we're able to partner and make some of those adjustments in the plan so that we can make it nicer.
Dave, I'd like to, first of all, thank code enforcement for taking care of a really unpleasant situation involving a rental house in my neighborhood, and they were very prompt. But could you talk a little bit about their activities in cleaning up some of the blighted areas in the city?
Yes, code enforcement has done a fantastic job. Thank you for sharing a positive story. That's, you know, and that all that credit goes to Derek Hill, our director of code enforcement. When I created that department and then I was on the search for the department head, it was crucial that that person understand that we were creating a department of enforcement that was going to come with, you know, citations and starting to lean on people and lean on property owners and force these things to get cleaned up. However, the balance of partnership in that. So we did not want the enforcement czar out there just making everybody angry. And he has done a great job of bringing a partnership, education, information, and I'm getting all these positive stories as things get cleaned up. So they continue to do great work. Probably our biggest hurdle right now in that department is we don't have enough money in the unsafe building fund. And so as buildings that need to come down are referred through code enforcement on unsafe building, we run out of funds pretty quick in taking those down. So our goal will be, once we come out of some of the financial constraints of COVID, to add more money to unsafe building. But we are moving so much quicker, particularly on burnouts. You saw that house that unfortunately caught fire on West Main Street, and we were able to navigate through the demolition so much quicker than we have in the past. And so they are doing really great work. But if you encounter any hurdles, please never hesitate to let me know. But one of the other things that's really helping it are the digital components that we added through our big investment in our new software. So now people can just go online on their phone, even take a picture of a mess or a problem and send it right to Derek Hill's office themselves and say, here's the mess, here's the problem. And then they dispatch right out and take care of it. So I just can't say enough great things about the work they're doing and how they keep cleaning up the city, going through alleys and getting all this stuff cleaned up. It's also, by the way, one more thing, helping with absent property owners that for too long have let their properties just sit and deteriorate. So namely the Bradford down here on 12th and Main, we utilized code enforcement to start leaning on them. They started getting violations. And today we have ownership of that building and it'll come down probably in the spring when the weather breaks. So that building will be gone. And that's one of the reasons we created code enforcement, was to let people know you can't just let a building sit and deteriorate. You got to take some action.
What's new with the old hospital property as far as having a vision there and a timetable for deciding what we're going to do with it?
Sure. We included visioning with the community in our comprehensive plan process when we developed Richmond Rising. We took in a lot of data and a lot of feedback from the community. It's really only sitting on hold now because the hospital is navigating through some of the work that they have to do in their agreement with the state that will eventually inform the environmental restrictive covenants that will be on the site. It was a hospital there for a long time. So we know that once there's a little bit of remediation work done in the dirt and there's a little more investigating, they have the well sitting out there. There will be some restrictive covenants that comes out of that. We're not sure what that's going to be yet, but that will inform future development so that we can steer it in the right direction. And then we'll pull back all the data out that we collected during the comprehensive plan process and kind of overlay those two things together. So that's really what we're waiting for right now, is that to be completed to inform the ERC so that we know exactly what we're working with and how to move forward. But I still enjoy driving by there and just seeing that beautiful field. It's nice to see that all gone. And that, of course, is the work of every elected official in Wayne County. That was a tremendous undertaking, and everybody did such a great job. Well, if there are no other questions, thank you so much for having me today. I truly enjoy being here with you, and I'll look forward to coming back and speaking with you again.
Thank you, Dave. We'll give our silent Kiwanis clap. You see all the hands moving, but you hear nothing. So just imagine the massive applause that you hear. So as a reminder, next week's speakers, we're going to talk with several of our grant recipients. That includes Communities in Schools, the YMCA, Sunrise, Birth to 5, and JC House. We'll have representative from all 5 of those organizations to give us an update on how they're using their grant money from Kiwanis and what new is happening with their organization. So thanks everybody for joining us. Everybody please stay warm, stay healthy, and we'll see you next week. Have a good weekend. It was silent.